We also have subject matter experts from the Oregon Health Authority and the Department of Environmental Quality. And once we run through that run of show, then we will open it up for Q&A. Matt, I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. As Bobby mentioned, my name is Matt Marhai, and I am the Deputy Director here at the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, and a longtime employee and has dealt with an awful lot of incidents in this state. What we'd like to really communicate with you all today is really the situation that we're working very proactively with our state partners and our local, tribal, and local communities. But first off, I'd really like to focus a very prime message, which is the drinking water in the state of Oregon is clean and safe to use and to drink. From there, we really want to talk a little bit about a situation that is occurring most certainly nationally, as we see shortages and challenges with the chlorine distribution and production throughout the state, throughout the country, but also because of a very specific issue, the distribution and production of the chlorine used in water and treatment and wastewater treatment for the really most of the West is facilitated out of a company that's located in Longview, Washington, called Westlake. And they have had a power disruption due to a power connection failure, which is in the process of being repaired today. We expect to see that facility has power before the end of the month, and production is able to resume and deliveries back on track. But the challenge for most of our local communities and water and wastewater production facilities is this chlorine product, whether it's in gas form or liquid form, is really critical in the production of safe drinking water. And as Bobby mentioned, we're joined with a couple of subject matter experts, which will all be providing some additional updates to you all about what their systems are and what they know about that situation and what we're doing about it. So I'd like to focus the State Emergency Management Organization, the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, is working proactively with over 33 state organizations as we activate our State Emergency Coordination Center to proactively address the public information and education materials, as you're all being a participant in that through our Joint Information Center, and Bobby will talk more about that, as well as leaning forward with our tribal, county, and local communities and water and wastewater organizations throughout the state to really plan for the potential of a shortage of this critical material and what impacts and potential gaps might exist in the production of water and or the facilitation of wastewater treatment. We'll talk more about those partners, the Oregon Health Authority partner, Andre, and my DEQ partner, Justin. We'll talk in just a minute. As I mentioned, we have activated the State Emergency Coordination Center. We will be facilitating an 8-to-5 response. We really truly work to understand the situation, develop plans and solutions for the potential challenges that could become a reality for communities that need this particular material for that fresh water and wastewater treatment. We'll be activating on Monday through Friday, really engaging in a business hour. And today, as I'd mentioned, all the water is safe and clean to drink. We will continue to ramp up operational response if needed, if anything in that nature changes. But really, again, over this weekend, we continue to focus on the situational awareness and building those proactive plans on what we will do if something or a community finds a gap that's needed. We will be doing local coordination calls with our, as I mentioned, the State Emergency Coordination Center partners, those 33 organizations, and any partner that is needed. We're working very closely with our water and wastewater associations, water treatment and wastewater treatment facility owners, as well as public officials and emergency managers around the state. We are expecting to continue to develop a strong situational awareness of what the current availability of resource and what the facilities in the communities, over thousands of them, that may need or may be able to identify that they need the material and what their supply and when that supply might not be available to them if production has stopped. We are continuing to work with partners like our Portland Water Bureau, our Oregon's Water and Wastewater Alert Network, and other associations to ensure that as production or product availability becomes a continual issue, if we need to engage to provide alternatives, we can do so. And again, our Oregon Health Authority and our Department of Environmental Quality will talk a little bit about some of the actions they're taking to ensure that an alternative or additional chemicals that could be used, or even regulations released that allow facilities to continue to produce and facilitate the support for their communities. Today, we find again that the power outage has ceased production, and that our Washington state partners are working very closely with their emergency management organization, as well as their power and utility companies, to ensure that they can replace that power functionality and restore production at the Westlake facility. What we learn is that that Westlake facility is really the sole provider of this particular resource for most of the Northwest, as far east as Denver, Colorado. So again, as we see the shortages for chlorine type materials for your pools and things of that nature, this particular issue is acute because of a normal failure of an electronic grid structure that has caused this problem. So no specific incident that has caused it other than a failed transformer. We are, as we engage with all of you, truly focused on ensuring that the public knows that the state is aware and is proactively and progressively planning with each other to ensure that the state, the tribal, the county, and the local communities can provide resources and support to the population, and most certainly the water. We will be maintaining a 24/7 access to our local communities for any issues that change from today or tomorrow between 8 to 5. And then after those hours, the Oregon Emergency Response System is poised to ensure that the system can continue to respond and react as needed. As we continue to gain that situational awareness, we will continue to update our briefing informations and talking points. And again, I'll be passing it off to our partners in a minute to get more specific on the technical details that they're working on, as our Oregon Health Authority is responsible for the drinking water program. And of course, our Department of Environmental Quality manages and facilitates all hazardous materials in the state. And they are working very closely together to ensure that we can adjust and or provide appropriate resources for our communities. So I'm going to pause right there. Real quick, I'd like to call out Andre from the Oregon Health Authority. Andre, are you on?
Thanks, Matt. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to provide some updates on what actions OHA is taking regarding our chlorine supply shortage. So as of yesterday afternoon, OHA is reaching out to all of our sorry, let me back up a little bit. My name is Andre Uso. I'm the administrator for the Center for Health Protection within Public Health of OHA. And in that center, we have our drinking water programs. We are the primacy agency for enforcing the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act. And we also regulate small state level systems too. Sorry for that lack of introduction there. So I just want to talk about some actions that were taken to assess the situation. We are in an information gathering mode and a situational awareness mode. We've sent out a survey to all of our systems that we know that use chlorine, asking them to provide information on the type of chlorine they use and what their remaining supply is. As of about 3:30 this afternoon, we've got about 140 systems that have responded back to that survey. We don't have any acute issues with public water systems right now. Acute would be defined as 72 hours or less of chlorine. We do have a handful of systems that have anywhere from 14 to 7 days of chlorine left, and we are proactively reaching out to those systems to see how they can adjust their operations and adjust their chlorine levels to still provide safe drinking water to their users, but also conserve the chlorine that they do have. Let's see, so we know that about 50 systems that do use chlorine supply most of the drinking water to the state of Oregon, and we're in pretty good shape with most of those large systems. Systems generally have about 20 to 30 days on supply right now. So I just want to repeat that, as Matt said, that statewide there is not a problem with drinking water. It remains safe, and that most systems are in good shape with their chlorine supplies. So I'll just remain on the line and be able to answer any questions as they come up later.
Great, Andrew. Excuse me, great, Andre. Thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to pass it off to our DEQ partner, Justin Green.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Green. I'm the Water Quality Administrator for DEQ, and we regulate wastewater treatment facilities in Oregon. DEQ is in a similar situation as OHA, where we are working with local governments and local government associations to survey wastewater treatment facilities to see what their chlorine supplies are and how long they expect their inventory to last. We are not aware of any acute issues as far as shortages at this point. If we do become aware of any acute issues, we will prioritize our efforts to work with those facilities. We're also looking at alternatives to chlorine for disinfection and determining what requirements will be put in place for those alternative methods. While we await the results of the survey, we are working with counterparts in other states as well as EPA to gather information regarding chlorine production and supply, analyze alternatives to chlorine for disinfection, and address any waivers or variances from current permit requirements that may be necessary. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Justin. And really what I'd like to really point out to all of our partners on the phone is that the state enterprise comes together often, whether we're dealing with a pandemic, wildfires, or floods and winter storms. The enterprise works very closely together to ensure that the state's response is efficient and flexible and proactive as possible. And that's really what you're seeing here. The state engaging in conversations with all of our local providers and local communities. As I'd mentioned, we're doing daily calls with our county, tribal, and local partners, and many of the associations and organizations engaged in water and wastewater treatment. And today, what we find, again, no one is acute, but we want to lean forward to ensure that we can see any potential challenges or concerns coming forward and really be as proactive about the messaging and the actions that the state can take. Another set of partners that I really kind of want to call out is our business partners. Westlake has been engaged in the conversations as the production facility. Our regional partners with the Washington State Emergency Management and responders and electricity and utility providers in that organization, as well as, again, many of those associations and water facilities really working together to see if we understand what the issue is and make sure that we can lean forward. We are also engaged with our federal partners to ensure that they are aware and can be available to assist if the state is unable to provide or find a resource that could potentially be provided by our national or federal partners. We've been talking an awful lot recently about the mutual aid opportunities. And one of the challenges with chlorine and the ways that it is provided, it is very difficult to share from one facility to another. But we are working and communicating with the partners, the local jurisdictions that own the materials, to see if there's a way to do that. So just one of the examples, a way of mitigation and advanced planning is occurring to try to provide a solution for those communities that may be a little closer to those deadlines than we want. I didn't talk a little bit about Westlake. Again, the power is expected to be back onto that facility around the 28th or 29th, with production occurring shortly thereafter. And one of the challenging planning efforts that we'll have for us in the near future is to work with that production facility and the transportation and distribution to ensure that those facilities that are closest to any kind of need or lack of supply can be prioritized throughout the state. Something that still has to be worked, and we look forward to working with those partners in the call, as well as all of our local and providers themselves to get a clearer picture and find solutions in that way. From here, I would actually like to call on Bobby Doan, my lead PIO, to talk a little bit about the Joint Information Center and the system that she's managing with all of our partners to provide clear and concise information. Bobby?
Yes, good afternoon. Again, thank you everyone for joining today. Mirroring what you're hearing on the operational side from Matt and our co-leads, we are doing the same on the information front, working directly with the Oregon Health Authority, DEQ, the Governor's Office, multiple water utility partners, and our local counties, tribes, and other partners across the board. We're also communicating directly with our Washington partners and the Westlake facility media relations as well to ensure that what we are putting out is updated, current, and factual. That has been part of the challenge thus far, is just making sure that what we are putting out is as updated and current and accurate as we can get so that we can help hopefully leverage all of you as our partners and champions to help make sure that we are providing factual information to the public. Following this media availability, we will be putting out a news release, just kind of summarizing the conversation and making sure that we address any of your questions here. We have translations going out. We've got some social media we're working on with our partners to make sure that they can get the good news out that right now, water is still safe, and that is the message, so that we can help counter any of those rumors and really just push out the facts. We are working with legislative offices, with our Emergency Coordination Center for the operational side, and pretty much any other group you could think of. We are talking to them about this issue. I think a lot of folks today are probably just tired of hearing me talk. We have, with that news release, we'll have some contact info, and then we've got some talking points that we're sending out with partners with some contact information. So we'll have a general email and some other just point of contact for all of you, so that you know who you can call for those questions that you have. In the works right now, it's not live yet, but working on finalizing a landing page website so that we can make sure that the resources are clear and you folks can get access to that. That's posted online, so that it's a little easier to share. I think that's it. Unless you have anything else, Matt, I'll go ahead and kick it back to you if we've got any other proactive briefing. Otherwise, we're down to about 10 minutes, so I'd like to open for Q&A.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd like to add to that before we go to the questions and answers is really just to really comment on what you provided. We are working very closely with our governor's office, the Oregon legislature, and even our congressional delegation to ensure they are aware and also as proactively informed as we possibly can. Again, one of the values of this system and these programs are that the community really comes together. And I want to call out again those water and wastewater associations. The water and wastewater treatment facilities have been very proactive. We are seeing engagement from our League of Oregon Cities, our Association of Oregon Counties, our grocers associations, really are all coming together to ensure that the impact or the potential impact is understood and what they can be, how they can be a part of the solution in the future. So great communication around that effort. So Bobby, I will pause there and see if you want to kind of manage the questions and answer portion.
You bet. So recognizing we're running a little bit late, I just want to verify. I know Matt's okay to stay on for a few minutes longer. We'll add 5 minutes to the Q&A to make sure we have time for all of you, understanding it is a short time frame. I see a few hands raised, so I'll start there. But if you do have a question you want to make sure we get to, please feel free to drop it in the chat so that we can make sure we answer accordingly. Jim, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Sure. Thank you very much. Matt said that the production should be back online 28th or 29th. Again, that's 10, 11 days away. And Andre said there are a couple systems out there that have 7 to 14 days of chlorine left. So what do you do in that situation? That seems like cutting it pretty close.
Yeah, Andre, would you talk a little bit about some of the curtailment and planning efforts that are occurring with those facilities to potentially extend that supply?
Sure, thanks, Matt. Yeah, OHA is going to reach out to those systems that are between 7 and 14 days, and we can work with them and provide some technical assistance on reducing the amount of chlorine that they're putting in water. A lot of systems put more chlorine than is regulatorily required. It doesn't affect health and the quality of the drinking water. So there is some leeway that we can conserve chlorine, reduce the levels, but still provide some safe drinking water to water users. And then if we get to a point where it's a little bit more dire than conservation, Matt mentioned we have OWARN, which is our mutual aid assistance group of water utilities. And we can look into transferring some supply if it's possible to those systems that are in need.
Can you let us know what systems those are, what facilities those are?
Sure. As of today, let me get my list. I'll list them off. We have Corvallis with 18 days, Estacada with 16 days, Florence 16 days, Medford 14 days, Ashland 14 days, Forest Grove 15 days, Scappoose 14 days, and Junction City with 7 days. And I can't see it on my list here, but some of those systems do have chlorine orders that they're anticipating coming in early next week as well.
And that's an important detail. Although production has stopped because of the power issue, there was still a supply and some of those deliveries are continuing to occur. So we are seeing, again, supply and demand that is continuing to go, but a production that will have to catch up once the power is returned.
Thank you. Alexandria?
Hello. I was just wondering if you could explain in layman's terms what purpose chlorine serves as far as making safe water.
Sure, thanks for the question. I'm not a drinking water engineer or expert. I'm an administrator, but I do understand that chlorine is a miracle of the 20th century. It is really a chemical that has allowed us to keep our drinking water safe. Recently, in the past 100 years, it disinfects bacteria that may be growing in the water. So, for example, fecal coliform is a pretty common group of bacteria that do propagate in drinking water, and chlorine disinfects it. And these are very small levels of chlorine that we're putting in drinking water. So it's really prevented illness and death for the past, ever since we started instituting it in public water systems. So it's really a great and useful chemical that we obviously are dependent on today for safety.
We'll give it just a moment, but I'm not seeing any other questions or hands raised or anything in the chat.
Looks like Alexandria has another question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is kind of just a clarifying one, just in case I missed this. So this Westlake facility is located in Washington, correct?
That is correct.
And when did they shut down and why?
They had a power transformer that failed into that community, and I would have to check on the date on when that failed. I apologize, I don't know the answer to that.
That's right. Okay, thank you for
Bobby, are you
clarifying.
familiar with that answer? Have you heard that?
On when it went out?
Yeah, when the power went out?
I believe it was the 16th, but I'm looking to confirm. Andre, does that sound right with what you've got?
I don't know the exact date, but we were made aware of it when utilities started contacting the state a couple of days ago about concerns over supply.
We can confirm that and get back to you on that, Alexandria.
Thank you.
So Bobby, as you were describing, I don't see additional.
We
Oh,
do.
you do?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yep. So we have a question from Tracy Berry. Do you have figures on the stocks of chlorine supplies by day for other systems in Lane County, such as EWEB and Springfield Utility Board?
Yeah, we're collecting that information. It's ongoing. Like I mentioned, we sent out a survey to our public water systems yesterday around 4. We asked them to reply within 24 to 48 hours. And then if we identify systems that we know use chlorine that haven't replied to the survey, we'll proactively reach out to them and ask them to complete that information. And we are updating that information daily, and we turn that over to OEM probably by close of business today or shortly thereafter. And we'll continue to update that information on a daily basis.
Thank you, Andre. Virginia from the Statesman Journal would like to know, once the power returns, is there an estimate on how soon production will begin again?
Yeah, I can provide a little insight there. We are understanding that once power is returned, they would be able to begin production of the product the very next day. So we would expect by August 1st that production would be back up and running for that facility.
Thank you. Kelly McGannon is asking, do we have a date on when water may no longer be safe to consume? So about how long, and do we have a date on when water may no longer be safe to consume? I think it's reiterating the point earlier, Andre.
Yeah, well, that's going to be determined by the individual systems, right? So OHA doesn't make that call. The individual system will be able to notify customers that they would have to either go into curtailment or issue boil water notices there are rules and regulations on when and how they should issue those notices to their users and customers. But like I said, it's going to be specific to a particular water system. They have that responsibility to communicate that out to their water users. And I don't think that we will get to that point at this point today. We're still in pretty good shape. So I hope that we won't get to a point where a water system will have to issue a boil water notice or start talking about some extreme curtailment.
Thank you. From Catherine Cook, apologies. What can and should the public do to conserve water, and for how long? I know you just addressed how long, so perhaps just some ideas on what the public can do to kind of help out to conserve.
Sure, thanks for the question. I think at this point, people can continue to use water as they usually do for drinking, cooking, and bathing. But as we are in summertime, and we do have some drought conditions in part of the state, that people should really limit their outdoor use of water. Watering their lawns, washing their cars, or filling up their swimming pools. So, some common sense conservation activities by water users would be great. So I guess that's pretty much all I would have to add at this point.
Okay, another question from Alexandria. Aside from aid from other agencies, are there any other chemical facilities that you're in contact with if the situation becomes dire?
Yeah, I don't have firsthand information about that. I do know that there are other producers around the country. I don't know what their actual supply is, but we do have indication from some systems that they are getting some supplies delivered as early as next week.
And I will add to that we are working very closely with Oregon Health Authority, DEQ, and others to find alternative sources, but there are very limited capabilities. And I know that even international efforts to work with facilities in Canada has been engaged. So still in process and working that issue today.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have. We will get a news release out for folks kind of summarizing this and adjusting to make sure that we address the questions asked. Thanks so much for joining and have a great day.